So I'm a music supervisor and DJ. So music supervisor, if you don't know what that is, I'm the one that helps license music to be put into films. So it's like DJing for movies in a way. Thank you. So who here is seeing this for the first time? Wow, a lot of people. Oh, I'm so excited for you. It's so great. Who saw it? Is there anybody here that saw it when it opened at the Toronto International Film Festival in 2003? No? But you've seen it? Okay. You weren't, okay. So that's my connection with the film. When we were putting together this series, this was one of the first ones I thought of because I did get to see it at TIFF in 2003. And it's a little bit of a brag because I saw it open and there were, Sylvia Tyson was sitting like right in the seat in front of me and I got to see her reactions to everything while she was watching it, which was really cool. And there was also a big after party at the Palais Royal in Toronto that had performances by the Full Tilt Boogie Band, Bonnie Bramlett, Bernie Ledden, the Dexters, Jeff Martin and the Tea Party was there, Garth and Maud Hudson, which was special for me. That was my first time seeing Garth and Maud, big fan of the band. Just to set the tone before we get started with it, I wanted to ask, was anyone actually at any of these shows here? Oh, so you were in Toronto. That's so exciting. I'm going to want to talk to you afterwards to find out more about it. Did you pay? Did you pay to get in? Okay. That's funny. So 1970, for any of you that here, many of you that are too young to remember 1970, it was the start of the new decade, right? So this is the first summer after Woodstock. So, you can imagine, just the before Woodstock, after Woodstock, there was a big change in the culture, counterculture, the expectations of a music festival. Like music festivals all of a sudden became a really big deal. So Trudeau was prime minister, not obviously the current, but it's just interesting that we had a Trudeau as prime minister at the time. Richard Nixon was president. Just setting the dystopia here. Obviously, the Vietnam War was a big issue. It was the first Juno Awards in Canada were 1970, and the ACTRA Awards. The first Earth Day as well was in 1970. The Maple system, if anyone knows, came into effect in 1970, and that was a way for Canadian content to be recognized. So MAPLE stands for Music Artist Producer Lyrics. So that was a way for more Canadian content to be put on radio. So it was interesting to know that started up in 1970. We had Paul McCartney announce the Beatles breaking up in 1970. That was a big musical moment, of course. Best Picture, the Oscars that year was Midnight Cowboy. We had the Kent State shootings in Ohio as a result of the Vietnam War protests. We had the Apollo 13 crash landing, which I'm sure many of you see the movie about that. The American Top 40 Countdown with Casey Kasem started that year too. The artists that were dominating the charts in 1970 include the Guess Who, Anne Murray, the Beatles, of course, CCR, the Temptations, the Carpenters, Jackson 5, Simon and Garfunkel. In Canada, American Women by the Guess Who was probably the biggest song of the year. As the Years Go By Mash McCann, you'll hear in the documentary. Up on Cripple Creek by the band. And Me and Bobby McGee, the Gordon Lightfoot version, was also on top of the charts in 1970. And you're going to hear a lot about the ticket price controversy in this as well. So I wanted to put it in perspective. So people were complaining about the high ticket prices. They were ranging for $10 to $14 to see. I know. But just to put that in context, it's around $70 to $100 today, what that would be worth. Woodstock tickets for the 3-day festival were $18. So, a ticket price around 1970 would be like $3 to $6 to see a band. So for 2 days, 20 bands, Festival Express, $14 ticket price. Net, in hindsight, doesn't seem too bad, even $100 in today's money. But the U.S. was in recession at the time, so that might have had an impact on people's emotions around spending money and that sort of thing. Also, I looked up train travel, because I was kind of curious, just were people traveling on trains in 1970? And no, not really. The whole rail industry was being kept alive by government subsidies pretty much from the 1960s. It really petered out. There was a big expansion of infrastructure after World War II, the Trans-Canada Highway. So there was much more automobile travel, and also commercial flights became more popular and affordable then too. So not many people were actually traveling on trains. So this would have made it even more of a novelty, this kind of festival at the time. So I hope you enjoy seeing these absolute legends projected like 50 feet behind me. It's going to be a really awesome show. I'm going to, after the credits, we'll be back. I'm going to chat to you about what we've experienced. I'll share some more insights behind the scenes about the making of the film, and get some of your feedback on it. So please enjoy Festival Express. And I want to thank our sponsors, Take Note Boutique. They're located right here in the Westdale Village. They have lots of local and Canadian-made goodies, great gift shopping, gift cards that are cards. Thank you, that sort of thing. So thank you so much for our local business sponsors that make this event happen. And please enjoy Festival Express. It was goosebumps after seeing Janis Joplin on screen. Seriously, I heard some people clapping. After the live performances, and I'm glad that had an effect on you. Seeing it on the big screen and hearing it like that is, it's pretty special. It's pretty special to get to see something like this on the big screen at the Westdale. So really fortunate that they are presenting it for us. And again, thank you so much to our local business sponsor, Take Note Stationery Boutique. Go check them out just down the road. So have a few notes to tell you about the festival. It was originally called the Transcontinental Pop Festival. I think Festival Express is a much catchier name. It was originally meant to be 5 days, actually. Montreal was going to be a stop, but the city canceled it because it was conflicting with Jean-Baptiste Day. And so anyone that had a ticket for the Montreal show, it was honored at Toronto, and they could take the bus to go see it. And Vancouver was supposed to be part of it as well, but they couldn't secure a venue in time, so that was cut as well. It happened June 27th to 28th at the Toronto CNE, estimated crowd size of 37,000. July 1st was at Winnipeg Stadium, about 4,600 people. That stadium was demolished in 2013. But in Calgary, it happened on July 4th and 5th at the McMahon Stadium. About 20,000 people saw it in Calgary. So why did it take 33 years for it to come out? It's complicated. It almost wasn't even filmed. The original producer, Willem Poolman, organized a crew a week before to capture it. So thank goodness that they did that. When they originally saw the footage, they were actually a bit embarrassed by it because the protests, the violence, it was just not what they were hoping to convey. And of course, they couldn't have realized how special the footage would come to be in later years. The footage was lost for a while. It was actually in Willem Poolman's garage. There was about 150 film canisters. So in the mid-90s, when they started going through this footage again, they had to track down a lot of the audio content. They were able to find a lot in the National Archives of Canada as well. If you're not familiar with them, there's a lot of Canadian filmmakers' films that are preserved at the National Archives of Canada as well, so it's a great resource. They needed a lot of money to finish it. They had to rely on some wealthy private investors to get it made. I mentioned that I'm a music supervisor, so one of my jobs is licensing music for film, and I can tell you it's a very lengthy process to try to secure rights for music, especially if there's multiple songwriters, publishers. You're dealing with the states a lot of the time if the songwriters are deceased. So tracking down all those rights would have been a really crazy process and also very expensive. It can be tens of thousands of dollars to license one song. So a lot of the songs they actually used were traditional songs, which just means that they don't have to pay for the publishing side of the song because it's kind of like in the public domain. So that's a way that they can kind of potentially save money and use more songs in the film, and then they're just paying for the actual performers. And you can imagine trying to get the rights to actually have the artists appear in the film. So they might have had paperwork signed in like 1970 when it started, but then tracking down those rights again and re-obtaining the rights would have been a big process as well. So it's really complicated to finally get something like this made. So, knowing all that, it's not a surprise that it did take 33 years for it to actually be shown in the public. There was a lot of artists that weren't featured that were in the festival that didn't make it into the cut for various reasons. Some of them you could catch in the train jams if you knew who you were looking for. But other artists that were on the bill were Mountain, New Riders of the Purple Sage, Delaney and Bonnie and Friends, which you did get to see Delaney Bramlett mostly. He was guesting with Ian and Sylvia Tyson in The Great Speckled Bird, and he also was in the opening song, Going Down the Road Feeling Bad. I'm so bummed that there wasn't any Delaney and Bonnie footage in the finished documentary. The Ides of March, which actually had a really big hit called Vehicle at the time. It was like number 3 in Canada, number 2 in the US, so not sure why they didn't make it. 10 years after, was on the bill as well. According to producer Gavin Pullman, Alvin Lee wouldn't give them permission to use that footage because his guitar was out of tune. And Traffic, the band Traffic, performed only in Toronto, and unfortunately their record label would not grant permission for them to be filmed. So they are missing as well. Yeah, where to start with all the amazing scenes to talk about in this. But one thing I made a note of while I was watching it, just amidst all the financial controversy, I thought it was a very fitting choice that the Buddy Guy Band played Money. I don't know if that might have been a spur of the moment decision to as a little bit of a commentary on what was happening. Also wasn't mentioned in the documentary, but you can see the band, the performers, all the drug and alcohol use. You're like, how do these guys get up and actually perform the show? That it's amazing to think of, to see what was going on in literally drinking a train dry. Well, there was a doctor on board that was administering B12 shots, whatever they needed to take them up or bring them down. So that was the promoter Ken Walker's idea. What a character he is, eh? But he's smart, the show must go on. So that was a little bit behind the scenes doctoring that was happening as well to keep the train rolling. The band, that footage of the band is so incredible. I'm sure many of you music fans may have seen The Last Waltz. If you haven't, please go watch it. But that's kind of the most known footage of the band. But this is the band at the height of their career. Like 1970 was a big year for them, very commercial success, and they're also Canadians too, so this would have been a really interesting, thing for them to be a part of, to kind of represent Canada. Richard Manuel and John Till, from the guitarist in the Full Tilt Boogie Band, are both from Stratford, Ontario. Interesting enough, so there were some connections there with some Canadian musicians on the train, which is interesting. And then I obviously have to talk about Janis Joplin. That footage is more special, more remarkable because of just what it captured in her career. So just weeks after this, Janis and the Full Tilt Boogie Band went into Sunset Studios in Hollywood and recorded the album Pearl, which was then released posthumously because, unfortunately, as we know, Janis Joplin died of a drug overdose on October 4th of that year, at the age of 27. And so this is some of the last footage that was actually captured of Janis Joplin on stage, which is so jarring to think about how vibrant and how incredible that performance was that was captured. That was the end. And documentary style of the film is kind of interesting too. I'm not always a big fan of the talking heads kind of style that kind of takes you out of the scene, and but I think they did a really good job of balancing that in this with a lot of footage, and the kind of split screen was an interesting choice as well. So they could kind of fit more footage in a smaller time frame and kind of cover more of that. So there's 2 more documentaries that are announced in this series so far. So we have Gimme Shelter, that's on November 24th, and Heartworn Highways on December 22nd. And they're much more in style of what's called cinema verite, which kind of translates into just true cinema, or where you really, it's more of like the fly on the wall, where there's not really any narration or interviews, it's just showing you the raw footage and it's put together, presented in a story. So that's what we're going to see later on in the series. I want to open it up to some comments from you. We have a microphone that will be going around. I guess raise your hand either when I call on you or if you have a comment. But I want to start first with you, the gentleman in the front here that mentioned that you were at one of the shows. I would love to get some comments from you on that experience, if you wouldn't mind. Can you tell us your name?
Ron.
Ron. Hi, Ron. So you were in the Toronto show?
Yes.
Toronto scene. Okay, we're coming around with a microphone now. So what do you remember from that?
So my drug-addled friend and I drove a red Rambler and got lost on the Queenie Way when it was. We didn't know how to get to Toronto even. But once we got there, yeah, it blew us away. I do have a question that you may have an answer. Rich Fry, CBC2, did a little piece on Festival Express, and he mentioned that Grateful Dead composed Ripple while they were on the train. Do you know if they sang that at any of the performances?
I don't. I wasn't able to find full, I'm sure somebody has them out there, but I wasn't really able to find full track listings from all the days. I know they did write a song about their experience on the band. Like it was on the playlist that I had playing when everybody arrived. I think it may have to wait, or it might. I can't remember this. Does anyone know the song? You're putting your hand up. No. But so obviously the train was a very inspirational, time for, and there probably was a lot of songs written on the train that we don't even know about. That's interesting. I hadn't heard that about Ripple.
And I just wanted to add that to see Janice that close, looking at her face, watching her, it's like better than being there from way, because I was way far away.
Right.
So this is the best way to watch it. Thank you, Westdale, and you, Alicia.
Thanks so much. That's so exciting that you got to be there. And the choice that they had, Janis Joplin's, you basically see her face in profile that whole time. That was a really interesting shot of like, what else would you use for that footage, of course. I was thinking while I was talking that the Grateful Dead lyricist Robert Hunter was on the train, apparently, so that does make sense that some of those songs are written on the train. So
like the writer that wrote China Cat Sunflower, right?
I'm sorry?
Robert Hunter, as in the writer that wrote China Cat Sunflower by the Dead.
I know he wrote many of their songs.
Right? Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah.
He was actually high on LSD, and he wrote China Cat Sunflower. It was one of his first trips. Yeah.
Okay.
Anyway, I wanted to say that it was really special seeing the footage of Richard Manuel singing I Shall Be Released. You know how tragic his life was and how he died and everything. In the last waltz, they sing I Shall Be Released as an ensemble performance. And Richard Manuel is barely featured in it. So to hear his voice so clearly and to actually see his face up close is beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a really good point, because I think when I first watched The Last Waltz, I thought Robbie Robertson was the lead singer of the band, because I didn't know any better, right? So it's nice to see, the actual, a camera actually capturing what they're meant to capture and putting it together, and seeing some of those performances is amazing. I don't want to put my friend on the spot, but I have a friend in the audience that is a tour manager, and I would love to get his feedback on what he saw, because he saw it for the first time tonight. So John Morley, he has a touring management company based in Hamilton and works with bands like Arkells, Walk Off the Earth, Buffy St. Marie, Tim Hicks. And so John, how much would we have to pay you to have managed that tour?
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe not enough, or I'd do it for free. I don't know. It would have been quite an experience. One good thing is that promoter, a lot of times you're fighting with promoters and nickel and diming. Like, you get 10 beers and 1 bottle of whiskey. And he was like making sure they can have breakfast at any time. And like, he really did a great job looking after them. And I think he really wanted to make it an experience, which was great. which also makes me think of like a lot of times when you're trying to get to all these big festivals, there's so much logistics involved in getting everybody in and out. Like sometimes you can stay for an hour or two after the set, but a lot of times you got to leave right away. And sometimes your other friends and other bands, like you get lucky and you get to see like a big, you know, you can say, oh wow, we're playing here today and Paul McCartney's playing later, and you get to stay. And other times you got to leave. So kind of like what they mentioned in the movie there, where it was nice that a lot of those bands, like, you know, you're always coming and going, and you might be on the same bill, and you might think, oh, it's great, all those bands get to see each other, but a lot of times, you know, you're on at 3 o'clock, and then your bus has to leave, and you got a 10-hour drive, and you got to leave by, like, say, 7, and your good friends are at another big band or on at 8 or 9, and you're literally just crossing them in the same city, and you don't even get to see them. So they alluded there that they all got to hang out together and see each other's shows, where normally they never get to hang out backstage. And that's the bigger part, is the camaraderie of hanging out backstage. That must have been amazing for them, because it's not too often, even just with the band members themselves. Like we get together, everyone has the show. You got a couple hours at the hotel, then you got to go to sleep, and everyone disappears and goes their separate ways. So that's really nice. And just like the logistics of trying to, like, once the train stopped, I wouldn't know how you would, like, contain everybody, because maybe they're just waiting to get off. So, you know, if you're on a van or a bus and you stop at a truck stop and it's like, all right, guys, we got 10 minutes, and everyone scatters. Like, imagine when the train stopped. Like, how do you just keep track of all those people? Like, and you know, everyone scatters, and then if the train's leaving, it's like, okay, who's keeping track of who didn't make it this time? So, yeah, that was a few things I thought of. Thanks, Alicia. Thanks for doing this.
That's a really good point. No cell phones, you know, like if you're lost, you're lost.
Yeah.
There must have been a really big head count system that they had to count numbers. But that's so true. And I liked the footage that they showed the performers watching from the side of the stage. You could kind of see that they were hanging out and enjoying the show. And that is a rarity in today's music industry. So it would be amazing. I know the promoter, Ken Walker, hinted that he might be doing something like this again. I don't know, it's been almost 20 years since this came out, so I'm guessing he's not doing it again, but it would be amazing if something like this existed. But it just shows how rare it is and how special it is that it was captured on film. Was there anyone else that had any comments they wanted to share? Yeah.
For the money they brought in and the crowds that they announced in those 3 venues, I don't know how they would have ever been able to cover their expenses. So my guess is the reason it never did happen again was it just wasn't a financially viable thing. Did the gentleman that was coordinating that, did he take a bath on that? Was he? Yeah,
it lost a lot of money. I don't know the actual figures of it.
It's substantial. So my question is, it's never been repeated. Yeah. This Festival Express was a one-off, like forever. It's never been duplicated where all these bands were on the one train for, you know, like the better part of a week, right? I mean, it was what, two days just to get from Toronto to Winnipeg, right? Yeah. So the observation is, what a joy to be on that train. The cross-pollination that, you know, that it was like dying and going to heaven, music heaven. Because you just picked up everything from everybody else there. Yeah. It must have been like a high point in their performing lives to have been fortunate enough to have been selected to be on this train. It must have been just an extraordinary experience.
Definitely. And I loved how they showed the map of Canada as the train's going by, so you can actually get a feel for how long that would have taken and how much fun that would have been for them to just have days where they have no commitments, they're just hanging out and playing.
And just a postscript, I think those musicians probably influenced music written after the festival by the various groups, that they picked up a little bit of this or a little bit of that and incorporated it into their own sound, just because of, well, it was like chicks hatching, in the at the farm, under the heat lamps and stuff. It was just, what a wonderful environment. It's unfortunate it costs too much to put something like that on again.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it just hit at a really bad timing with kind of the mood of the times. So a lot of the protests that were organized against the ticket prices. It was an organization that was also involved in I didn't write down their name, but they formed out of the Kent State University Vietnam War protests. So there was a link between that and the protesters in Toronto for sure. So it was just an unfortunate sentiment at the time where, music should be free and we shouldn't be paying these exorbitant ticket prices, really hurt I don't think the promoters were anticipating that when they planned it. I'm sure it was planned, well in advance of any of these kind of protests that subsequently happened. So anyone else have any comments they'd want to share? Thank you again then so much for coming. This music series continues once a month. If you really like seeing music documentaries, we'll hope to have you back again. Thanks so much.